is buying the stairway to heaven. You can't say that Stairway to Heaven was a clear-cut way of getting good radio and success, because it was 9, 10 minutes long. And it didn't have a chorus, it didn't have anything. We used to play it at concerts and people just used to slow hand clap thing because they didn't know what it was.
I've worked on it for quite a while, and off. I was putting all the different sections together and putting them in what I considered was the right order before I even presented it to the band.
People used to say about Stairway to Heaven, what was it when you first wrote it, you know? As if there were sort of, you know, three white men knocking on the door. Excuse me, are you writing Stairway to Heaven here?
The double neck came after the release of the album, actually. So we could do it on stages. I couldn't do it on a 12-string or a 6-string. It's curious because a lot of people think that I actually, you know, we actually recorded it on the double neck. So set that one straight.
Zeppelin cemented its position as the top hard rock band of the decade with Houses of the Holy in 1973. And 2 years later with Physical Graffiti, an album that showcased Page's hypnotic riff mastery on the classic track Kashmir.
I think riffs really come to blues, but I certainly spent a lot of time working on riffs, and I might have put a lot of new insights into riffs that haven't been employed before.
Led Zeppelin had so much variety that it would be great if some of these, if classic rock is the bane of progressive music or whatever it is, it would be nice if they went to things, Physical Graffiti, and played it in The Rover or Custard Pie or something like that. You know, because it's the variety that keeps Zepp alive. Physical Graffiti was probably the greatest moment musically, or greatest set of moments. Because it was done with a mobile 16-track studio in an old house, and we were stuck in there, and we wrote things on the spot. Like Trampled Underfoot, Stairway to Heaven was written at Headley Grange, actually, for the 4th album, so I'm lying. Kashmir, In the Light, stuff like that, which was really very, very good.
Zeppelin's distinctive blend of hard rock power and compositional complexity was memorably demonstrated on the group's 1976 album Presence, with a track called Achilles' Last Stand.
That one was my brainchild, really, as far as you know, all these sort of guitar parts and, and all the, you know, the ascending guitar figures. And I remember John Paul Jones wasn't really sure that, you know, when I said, no, I've got a scale that goes over these, because if you can't, there isn't a scale. I said, believe me, I've got one.
1979's In Through the Outdoor was the last album Led Zeppelin would release as a group, and as a thumb of nose to critics who considered the band an overinflated hype, they put it out in a paper bag.
It still follows on from the early days of getting hammered by the press, saying, all right, we'll put it out in a brown paper bag then.
It was sold unfashionably 10 million copies as well. It's found it really funny how people used to knock it and then go, oh, you know, sorry, you'd look through their records, oh no, that's not really there. That's just a brown paper bag.
By 1979, punk rock was taking aim at all of rock's reigning superstars. So when Led Zeppelin did its first show in 2 years at the Nebworth Festival, the band had something to prove, and definitely did prove it.
Well, it was fantastic, actually. And they were starting to sing You'll Never Walk Alone, and all this, and it was fabulous. Really emotional. Day to remember, days to remember.
We were transcending yet another period. We'd gone from mid to late 60s, of all that kind of pan-psychedelia, through into the 70s and that kind of languid period of excess or whatever. And we were clawing our way out. And we were a wild group who needed to get to know each other again. We never got to know each other again.
A bit of rock and roll excess finally did catch up with Led Zeppelin on September 25th, 1980, when John Bonham died at the age of 32.
A great loss for music, generally, of course.
I think it's fair to say there hasn't been a drummer anywhere near him since in rock, certainly.
No, absolutely not. No. I think every drummer would be the first to admit that too.
He was confident. He wasn't loud. I mean, he got louder as the bigger bass drums that he used to order from Ludwig in Chicago. Once he got free drums from Ludwig, there was no holding him back. He just used to get bigger and bigger bass drums. And sometimes, too, we used to take the one bass drum away when he went out to get a cup of tea. If he got two bass drums set up, we used to steal the one. Because he could do more on one bass drum than anybody can do on two.
Bonzo's favourite music was actually the slower Motown stuff. It was either James Brown or the real sweet soul music, which he loved. This is why all those bands that sort of say, or supposedly sound like us, never get it right. It's all, bash, bash, and there's never all this, if you listen to what Bonzo did, you hear all this little stuff going on.
3 months after Bonham's death, Led Zeppelin, unwilling to continue without him, disbanded. In 1982, a collection of miscellaneous tracks called Coda was released, apparently as the group's swan song. That same year, Page released his Death Wish 2 soundtrack album, and Plant launched a successful solo career of his own. Led Zeppelin appeared to be history. Plant and Page have gone on to do occasional guest spots on each other's albums, but in 1985 there was a full-fledged Zeppelin reunion at Live Aid.
Does anybody remember that?
Years passed before Zeppelin's surviving members were persuaded to reunite once again, this time at the 40th anniversary party for their label, Atlantic Records, with Jason Bonham, son of John, sitting in on drums. In the summer of 1990, Jimmy Page returned to Knebworth to join Robert Plant and his new band for a tear through a Zeppelin tune the group had never played on stage, the track Wearing and Tearing.
We only had a night's rehearsal of that before, and it's a very unusual sort of sequence to it, actually, to try and remember, especially, of course, Led Zeppelin never actually played this number live on stage. We just recorded it, and that was that. So, yeah, it was pretty dangerous to do that. We've created so many fine compositions. We've done so many fine live performances together. It's natural that, you know, there's a hell of a lot there between us, you know, when we play together. I mean, blood's thicker than water.
Led Zeppelin may never regroup, but it doesn't really have to. The band's memory and its unforgettable music live on vividly to this very day.
For a start, it was full outstanding musicians, and yet we had this added dimension that we had the chemistry there.
We worked and we had no idea of what it was. We just did it, and it was spectacular. It's spectacularly loud, confident, and wrong a lot of the time, but it was excellent.
When people say Led Zeppelin to you, what does the word mean to you?
One of the greatest rock and roll bands in the world, one of the greatest bands in the world. That's what it means to me. I think a lot of other people too.
If you tuned in late, be sure to catch the encore presentation of the Led Zeppelin rockumentary. That's tomorrow night at 9 p.m. 8 Central Time. Right now, stay tuned for the Ren and Stimpy Show coming up next on MTV.
This MTV rockumentary is brought to you by MasterCard. Master the moment with the world's most accepted card. And by Bugle Boy, the company that believes in giving guys exactly what they like.
That same year, over in England, a new band called Led Zeppelin was formed out of the ashes of the disbanded Yardbirds. And while Zeppelin did come on all loud and distorted and reeling off riffs, the band itself, despite the many heavy metal progeny it spawned, was always much more than just that.
We were everything, really. With so many different areas of just the normal sort of the blues and rock and the acoustic, but then we also went into other areas as well.
The rising tide of heavy metal bands happily emulated Robert Plant's lead shriek and Jimmy Page's thick, murderous riffs as best they could, which was never all that well.
This is why all those bands that sort of say, or supposedly sound like that, never get it right, because it's all bash, bash.
Zepp has been every drum sample, every bass drum, every snare beat, every all that sort of thing. It's all over the place.
Finally, in 1969, there appeared in England a band that aspired to nothing more than maximum riff mania, and which essentially laid down the blueprint for most of the heavy metal that followed. This band's name...